Hi friends, Amanda here at Bare Bones Living, and welcome back to my kitchen. Today I have spent the entire day cleaning my kitchen. I hate when my kitchen is a mess, and I feel like my kitchen has been a mess a lot lately. So I've been on my feet all day, and being in my third trimester, being on your feet all day takes a lot out of you. So being on your feet all day, I wanted to have a nice, hearty, delicious dinner and something that I can make that is going to cook for a long time and it's just going to develop great flavor the longer it cooks, and I don't have to be such an active participant in the dinner. It kind of does it for me. So I'm gonna make a bolognese tonight. I have made this once before, but it was a while back and I don't remember what recipe I used, but it was good. So I'm gonna make one today. We're still going strong in our pantry challenge. I have a pound of ground pork and a pound of ground venison that I'm using instead of beef. And I'm going to be using both of those. And then from my pantry, I got this pappardelle pasta, egg noodle pasta from Azure a little while ago. And I've been kind of saving it for something that is nice and rich and hearty. So I think this will be perfect. I'll use this. I'll be using the last jar I have of store-bought tomatoes. I have to prepare a lot more canned tomato products this year. Don't get me wrong, I stored a bunch, but I stored a bunch as just like the lazy pasta sauce where I just throw everything into my roaster here and can it like that, or as salsas, which are delicious, but I didn't just can. I think I'm gonna can more just plain sauce or even whole tomatoes, so that I can be more versatile in how I use them. Because if I can whole tomatoes, I can turn those later into whatever I want. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, but it was a good note for me to realize, so maybe that might help somebody else. But this is my last can of store-bought canned tomatoes. And the recipe actually calls for crushed tomatoes. And all I have are these whole tomatoes, so I'm just going to crush them. And by that I mean I'm going to quarter them and kind of smash them down once I pour them into my pot here. So I'm using up some of my pantry goods here. And then I'm hoping also to make some French bread to go with this, because I think that would be really yummy. So if that interests you, why don't you stick around and we'll make this up. So first what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some olive oil to my pan and about 4 tablespoons of butter. So I'm just going to melt this butter down nice and slow, and then I'm going to be adding, in my food processor, I processed about 1 medium onion and a few carrots. Mine were frozen, so you might be able to see little ice chips in here, and they were definitely still frozen when I processed them. So I didn't plan that far ahead in my cooking. So there's going to be extra water in here from the freezing process, but I processed them down as much as I could frozen, because I really want them to cook down and kind of get lost. Oops. Kind of get lost in the sauce. And I'm gonna keep this on a medium heat, cooking these low and slow for a while, just to start breaking them down. So my carrots and onions have been slowly cooking over medium in that oil and butter, just softening, honestly defrosting the rest of the way. And it looks like most of the extra water has evaporated off. The object of making this or cooking these is not to brown these vegetables, you just want them soft. And I think we're there. So now I'm going to add my meat. So this is my pound of ground pork. And my pound of venison. And I'm just gonna chop these up, smash it up good, so it can start to cook, but again, you don't want to brown this meat. I'm gonna keep it on low, I'm gonna keep stirring it pretty frequently so that it doesn't really brown. Some slight browning is okay. But this is just a nice slow cook that you want on these vegetables and on the meat. So in the meantime, while this is slowly cooking, I'm gonna start on my French bread. And what I'm gonna do is I took a tablespoon of active dry yeast that I got from a Jour a while back. I've had this in my refrigerator for months now. And a tablespoon of organic cane sugar. I got a 25-pound bag of sugar, I think the month of December. And then I just store it in, I like to store my spices in pickle jars because they're nice and wide, but they're a small container, so I can keep it in my cupboard. So a tablespoon of each of those is in here, and then I have a cup of warm water, not too hot because you don't want to kill the yeast. And I'm just going to dissolve these in here. Now this is active dry yeast, not instant yeast, so it's going to need a second to really get activated in here. And you start feeding off of that sugar that's in here, trying to dissolve the sugar in the warm water. And once it starts to get a little bubbly, I know I can move on to adding the flour into here. So the yeast has become bubbly in here, and I'm ready to move on to the next step. So I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. and a teaspoon of salt. Along with about 3 cups of all-purpose flour.
I'm going to try dumping it.
You want to dump it?
Mm-hmm.
Don't. Alright, so that's 1. Two. You making bread?
I'm smelling it.
Yeah. What does it smell like?
It smells good and it smells like bread.
It does.
Mm-hmm. Want to smell some?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do 3.
3.
And let's mix this up and see
Can I mix?
what we think. Okay.
Can I mix, Mama?
I don't want you to make a big mess. So, not just yet. Okay.
Okay, Mama.
Mommy's already making enough of a mess, right? I'm gonna mix this all together.
Now taste the bread and we can smell it.
Alright, so I'm gonna knead it up.
Mm-hmm.
Try to work all this in there, right? I'm gonna knead it for like 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Yeah, that's a long time, huh?
Mm.
So now I'm just working this together. So I kneaded this bread for 10 minutes and then I kneaded it in this bowl so as not to dirty up my cutting board. I then greased this bowl and turned it once so that there's oil all over this dough ball, and I'm just covering it and I'm gonna let it rise for an hour. In the meantime, our meat is cooked through and our veggies are nice and soft, and now I'm going to add probably half of this bottle of wine in here. And this is where most of our flavor is going to come from. I'm going to stir this in. And again, we still just have this on low. Just going to kind of coat everything in this wine. And then I'm going to cook the wine out of this. All this wine is going to evaporate in our sauce. And after that evaporates, then I'm going to be adding 4 cups of milk. So this has been cooking for about 20 minutes. There's still a little bit of wine in here, which is fine. And I'm now going to be adding the 4 cups of milk. And I'm going to cook that for about another 20 minutes. after I cook this for 20 minutes, then I'm going to be adding those tomatoes. And I'm gonna smash those up. I'm gonna quarter them with some scissors still in the can to make it easier, and then once they're in here, I'll just mash them up a little bit more. And once I add the tomatoes, then I'm gonna cook it for about an hour until it thickens. So the bread is doing its final rise. I first did an hour rise on it, and it had already doubled, and then I punched it down, let it rest for 15 minutes, and then I rolled it out into these like foot-long loaves. Creased the edge, and then put it on this cookie sheet and put on an egg wash of 1 egg and like a tablespoon or 2 of milk. And I'm gonna let it sit here and continue to rise until it doubles. And then our bolognese over here is just about ready. I turned it down so that it wouldn't boil out all of our liquid. So I have it on the lowest setting. And then in the oven, actually right now, I'm cooking my quote-unquote attempt at a galette, which is basically like an open face pie. And when I was looking through my freezer for things to use up and make, I found 2 different bags that I had put like leftover store-made pie crusts that I had cut off. So I formed those into a dough because they were all different pieces of it. Formed it into a roll or a ball, rolled it out, and I put some peach jam that my aunt, or not peach, pear jam that my aunt made me from her pears in the middle, and then I just folded over the edges, used my egg wash on the edges, and then sprinkled some cinnamon and sugar on the edges, and that's cooking for a short time. And then once that's done, I'm hoping that these will have doubled in size and it'll all work out. I do need to still cook that pasta, and everything should be coming together right at the right time. Well, our bolognese is done, and our bread has maybe 5 minutes left on it. So I turned off the heat, and I'm actually going to add, with the heat off, I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of heavy whipping cream and stir that in. And then I'm going to season it with salt and pepper to taste. Remember, we haven't added any seasonings as of yet. But this heavy whipping cream is going to make this really creamy, kind of thicken this up a little bit. It's changing the color quite a bit. So this is a very creamy sauce because we cooked it in the 4 cups of milk. And now this cream is finishing it. And then I'm going to season it with salt and pepper. I'm also going to then start our pasta, which only takes like 4 minutes. Thank you guys for stopping by today and joining in on our journey here at Bare Bones Living. We'll catch you on the next one.